Hi everyone, welcome to the Global DIY Network. Today, unfortunately, our moderator Ken is having an issue and cannot start the session. So we will start directly with our first guest, Manu Manu. He's going to start his presentation. Global DIY Network.
Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me well and you can see my screen. I'm really happy to be here and take the opportunity to represent Mano Mano during the Global DIY Summit. Mano Mano is a European leader specialized in DIY and home improvement and gardening. So maybe let's start by a quick introduction of myself. So I'm Adrien Boulet. I joined Mano Mano at the beginning of the year, and I'm leading the manufacturer account. So the team in charge of developing the relationship with brands in Europe. I worked 8 years in the e-commerce industry before, so 2 years as a key account manager at Philips, and 4 years at Amazon in a vendor management role, and also 2 years in a consulting company, working especially on e-commerce and data consulting. So a quick brief before to start about the agenda. I will have a quick overview of Mano Mano, talking about maybe mainly our European presence and giving some key figures on. I will switch directly to some e-retail trends we identify, and we will finish by the impact on those trends on the organization and what are the pillars of Mano Mano to support this change for industries. So let's give you a few words about Mano Mano. Only 2 slides to be super quick. At Mano Mano, we cover 6 countries with 2 different platforms. So we have first Mano Mano B2C. So the website you may know, launched since 2013, and it's dedicated to final consumer. So we are present in UK, Spain, Italy, France, and Belgium. And we also have the Mano Mano Pro, so B2B website, launched in 2019 in France, Spain, and Italy, so Southern Europe. And it's a website dedicated to only DIY professional. So this is the 2 platforms we have, and we are of course a marketplace, so we do not buy stock. But we also have 3 different warehouses in France, Italy, and Spain, and they are dedicated to Mano fulfillment, so logistical service we provide for seller to help them to ship the final consumer with a really high delivery standards. So this service was launched 3 years ago now. And on the right side of the slide, we are a hyper growth company. So even before the crisis.
Sorry to interrupt you, yeah. But we can see your notes on screen.
Okay. Is that okay now?
It's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so as just said, we are an hyper growth company, and even before the crisis, at Mano Mano, we doubled our turnover compared to last year. And last time that Christian Resson comes at Global DIY Summit 3 years ago, he just said that we will be a $1 billion company in 3 years, and now you can see that we reached that 1.2 billion euros in 2020. So this is for us a huge achievement that we want to maintain, and we still want to grow on this one. Just a key figures about also the business side. So on Mano Mano, we have more than 10 million products online. So it shows the importance of the selection we have, and it also shows that there is strong competition in the future on the marketplace. Those 10 million products are sold by 3,060 sellers. It could be quite huge for some of them, but it's actually quite low compared to generalist marketplace or other marketplace, because we are a verticalized marketplace specialized on DIY and sectors, gardening, and we definitely want to be a selective also marketplace. So we don't want to have thousands and thousands of sellers on top of that, and we are really strict about the quality of our seller partner. It allows us today to reach 50 million unique visitors per month in Europe, and I think this is it means that we are today the European leader in terms of DIY gardening and on the sectors. So just a quick, also maybe more internal growth figures at Mano Mano. So we are actually approximately more than 800 people working at Mano Mano. Actually, we need to update this slide every week, I guess, because we are recruiting a lot, and we focus on recruitment on the future next month. We raised more than 300 million euros since the launch, with 125 million last year. So it also means that we want to continue to grow and to invest more in our development in the coming next year at European level. And now, one of the key things we have proud of is that we have 50% of our employees that are tech today. So it means that we are a tech partner for you, and we want to be the more innovative marketplace and actors in the sector in the coming next year. So just it was just a few words on Mano Mano. Let's now talk about some immediate trends we saw. We will start with a very obvious one. Of course, COVID crisis was in 2020 is a very special year, and you can see the figure here. So the growth of DIY pure player in 2023 in France, and the growth in the France in the DIY at global level, so 13%. So of course it will be it's a huge number for online growth, and it's also due to the pandemic. But I won't be very long on the data because I'm sure you already know it. But what I want just to mention here is more this number. So the 15 millions. 50 millions in 2020 is a number of new e-buyers in Europe. So it means that, and we talk here only about new buyers. So it's people who didn't buy anything before online. So what's interesting here is that on those 50 millions, 70% of them will continue to buy online after the pandemic. So we can definitely see that the consumer habits at EU level will stay, and it will change the way we need to address consumer. We always say that we need to be where the consumer are, and for now, and after the pandemic, and in the coming next year, the new consumer and the consumer will be online. So industry needs to change the way we address consumer, and I think this is part of our job to develop and to be more present in this e-commerce sector. To illustrate the boom also of e-commerce, I will have a word on the marketplace business model and the expansion and the boom of online marketplace business model. Just to start, I will redefine maybe what's the marketplace e-commerce marketplace business model. So it's a website where independent seller, professional seller, and sometimes individuals can sell product or services. And the marketplace business model is to take a commission and sell services to have that turnover. So definitely, this is this kind of business models that are growing fast and really fast since 2008, because as you can see on the slide, since 2008. We grew by 60 points, and in 2022, 70% of the global e-commerce business will be generated through marketplaces. And by marketplaces, we do not talk only about retail, such as Mano Mano, but also in finance, in transportation, in holidays, in real estate. We saw a lot of new business model and new platform working on the marketplace business model. So I think definitely this is the future of e-commerce will be a marketplace business model, and we can see it definitely on the figures. Why do we have this boom? It brings a lot of advantages to all the stakeholders working on marketplace. So The first one is the consumers. So consumers are more and more demanding today, and they want to find all their selection in one-stop shop. And today, marketplace business model allow people and consumers to find everything because marketplace do not buy stock. So they can offer the larger selection to their consumer without taking any risk to own the stock and the financial risk to own the stock. So definitely for consumer, this is a really high qualified traffic and really high qualified selection at the right pricing for them. So it was for the consumer. For the supplier, so for the manufacturer, it also allow you and all the manufacturer to launch all their selection in the shop. In traditional retail, there is physical issue to have all your stock and all your product live online or in the physical store. On a marketplace business model, you can clearly put live all your presentation, all your product. So this is for manufacturers. And for retailers, I just mentioned it before. It's completely a new business model. It could be a complement to your business model, and definitely it will allow you to propose more product to your consumer. I already talked about it a bit. At ManoMano, we have 10 million products available on whole ManoMano's website, and it comes with a huge new challenge of discoverability for manufacturers, and it will also come with a new type of competition. I will talk a little bit by new type of competition because today, mainly on marketplaces, we can see a lot of new brands appearing. So it could be local brands that can expand themselves in Europe thanks to international expansion that marketplace propose. It could be importers or Chinese brands or no-names brands working directly with Chinese factory and creating directly their product in the marketplaces. And definitely, this is something that those brands are really agile, are really flexible, and they take a lot of market share to a traditional manufacturer on marketplaces. So definitely the new type of competition allows the traditional manufacturer to review themselves in terms of process, in terms of product creation, in terms of agility, to be sure they can work and be visible on the marketplace. Because the second challenge we have on marketplaces is how to be visible within those 10 million SKU. And here are some clues. It really depends on how the marketplace business model is working, but here are some clues for the retail side. The first one is to work on content. So make sure to have your best content available for consumer. Make sure to understand why consumers are searching and what they are searching. So what are the keywords they are searching on. Second one will be availability. I talk about flexibility and agility, and availability on e-commerce is such an important topic to be sure that you can be visible to the consumer. So definitely propose your delivery delay that match the consumer needs. Propose delivery fees or free deliveries for consumer affects the way you will be visible on marketplaces. So definitely, this is the logistic one will be an important topic. Third one will be media. A lot of marketplaces propose media and marketing to be visible on marketplaces. So you need to invest time and resources on marketplace to be sure you can be visible on this. And last one, of course, it's pricing, because pricing is more and more competitive due to those new type of competition we can see. So definitely the pricing will be also a huge challenge for the coming next year on marketplaces. A few words about e-commerce B2B today on the DIY sector. So at ManoMano, we estimate the DIY B2B sales in Europe at 200 billion euros. And the share of e-commerce penetration in France, it's around 8% today. So there is a huge growth on e-commerce B2B, and there is still a lot of gap to fill. And we can see the switch is coming, and I just will have a word on why it's coming today. Because today, the two things, professional will duplicate the habits they have on the B2C website. So they want to find all the selections they want online. They want to find the product information they want directly on the web. And they also want to have the delivery capabilities. So definitely, this is the first thing is the professional behaviors is matching more and more the B2C behaviors. And the second thing is that technology is helping B2B to switch to e-commerce. So it means we saw a lot of new e-commerce platform growing today thanks to technology. So by technology, we mean how to address the complexity of B2B today. So there is a lot of them, and technology, automation, and also invoicing process that could be an issue for B2B are now a very low barrier to e-commerce. So that's why it's really growing in terms of B2B. And last but not least, I just will have a word on digital spend evolution that bring more control to brands. We can see that definitely the digital spend is growing, the e-commerce is growing, so the marketing budget is definitely switching to offline to digital. So it doesn't mean that everything will be digital, but definitely we have to be digital needs to bring more control and more data to brands, and we can see already the evolution. So, for example, in marketplaces, we can see that the search marketing, so the sponsor product in platform in the retailer website are now the standards, but we can see also new trends such as social shopping, live shopping, influence. So definitely the switch of budget and the control of budget will be a key focus to have in the next coming years as we can have more transparency and more data to control it than offline. So this is clearly a huge change that the retailer and brand can make on better control their digital advertising spending and their ROI on this. Just a word on impact for organization today, because there is mainly trends we didn't talk about, but I just focus on few of them. But today we have 5 different pillars that brands need to address to be sure they can choose the digital transformation. So the first one is, of course, is people. So it's key for you and it's key for people to hire the right talents with specific skills. Why? Because there is new consumer habits, but there are new technology, and you need to have the right people, and organization need to have the right people to bring this change. On top of that, the right knowledge and the right training support for the full organization is also needed, because the e-commerce change will not affect only the e-commerce capabilities or e-commerce resources. It will affect the entire organization, from logistic to sales administration, for example. So definitely you need to also transform the digital internally by providing the right support and the right training for all your company. And last one, and it's not an easy one, it's to make sure to have the right governance between the local team and the global team. Today, e-commerce allows cross-border management, and there is no frontier anymore for e-commerce, I will say. And definitely the governance between local and global team needs to be very clear on business side, but also on mechanism and processes. Second one is processes. So definitely new change and new e-commerce habits, bring new processes and new races between teams, because more than ever, e-commerce will affect all your teams. So you need to clarify very precisely who is responsible for what, and to fluidify all the process between all those teams. How you can do it is using automation. So automation is linked to agility. So the more you will automate the processes, the more you will focus on business value and agility. And last, also, but not least, we need to review all the financial and technical and commercial processes to match market reality. As we can see, the e-commerce business is growing fast, and is growing fast through marketplaces. Marketplaces is a new business model, and financial processes, traditional financial processes, and technical traditional processes are not adapted to this new business model. So it's key for organization to switch and to adapt their processes. Third one, of course, is data. Data is not a buzzword. Today, you have access, and organizations have access to a lot of data from marketplaces, from retailers, from a lot of advertising platforms, for example. And organizations need to develop data collection across retail, across retailers and media. So definitely, this is the first step to be sure you can collect in the right way all the data you need. Second step is the standardization. So the standardization is key to map and to be sure that you compare everything in the right way, and that the data can be mapped to your own mapping, for example. So standardization of the data is also a huge important way, and you need to work with new resources and new people such as data analysts and data scientists on it. Then it will be the democratization of e-commerce KPIs. As I said, the e-commerce will affect all your organization, and everything needs to be really understandable by everyone in terms of e-commerce KPIs. And e-commerce KPIs need to be included in all the organization. And last but not least, it will be also the transparency, and it also goes with democratization. But transparency for all stakeholders in your organization will be key also to be sure that everyone is working the same way. Supply chain, it will be the fourth one, and it will be definitely a direct-to-consumer strategy will be key in the future, not only for your e-commerce website if you have it, but also to be sure that you can address all the new business model coming. So definitely the supply chain will need to evolve with the new business model. So we just have a word about it on direct to consumer, but it will be key for you and for your organization to switch. And definitely the delivery delay, the delivery time will be key, because today consumers don't want to receive their products after 72 hours. So you need to work definitely with internally to reach this goal, but also to work with key partners to help you to reach the goal today. And the last one will be infrastructure, because we talk about data, process, supply chain, but all these kind of new processes, new data system, and new supply chain need to be really supported by a huge infrastructure in terms of ERP, in terms of cloud, in terms of data lake. So it's key for organization to connect the right tools, data analysis, data visualization, product feed to your ecosystem, in order to be sure and to ensure the process is really smooth between the organization. And of course, the last one will be to have the right product information management. It's key today to make sure to have the most powerful product information system to match the people need on content. I will finish by how ManoMano will support this change, and what are our 4 big rocks for next year. First one is technology. So we want to ensure we have the best UX and the best customer experience on our website. and definitely it will be key to perform in the coming next year. So we develop internally our own algorithm and whole platform, marketplace platform that allow us to bring a high qualified traffic on ManoMano, and this is, I think, a huge difference between other marketplaces or other retailer. As it makes a difference. We are really a strong tech partner for you, as we are really agile and independent on technology. And 50% of our organization is now tech, and we will continue to reach new talent on this. Second step will be international. So we will focus on our six countries today. So to increase our online EU leadership. So in France, Italy, Spain, UK, Belgium, and Germany. And the idea for us is to facilitate the EU expansion of our partners, providing the best logistical services and support. And just a word, we want to target the 50% of our business outside France in this year and the coming next year to be sure we can increase our presence internationally. Third one is partnership. Definitely, we want to have a tailor-made partnership with our seller across Europe. So it will be human support for your partners, but also technological support, and really a tailor-made one. We are a selective and verticalized marketplace, so we want also to have a human management for all our sellers to bring also our knowledge in technology and in the industry. And definitely we want to provide services to allow a light asset business model for our partner. So we propose marketing services and logistical services. And just also a KPI for you, only 4% of sellers are accepted today on ManoMano. And last one, and I will give the mic to Ken. We want to focus on responsibility. Responsibility is now key for consumers. So we are, and we want to still be a company with high responsibility internally and externally. And we want to bring more and more transparency for consumers in the future, mainly using data. And also being a company with employee development focus to be sure that we can build, and everyone can build or their own path at ManoMano. I saw Ken is ready, so I will leave the mic to Ken, and I want to thank you all for your attention. Mike is yours.
The floor is mine. Thank you so much, Adrian. Stay on with me for a little bit, and hello to you all. I had horrendous internet issues this morning. You're there. You all have been here. Haven't you? Struggling to get into a meeting, thinking no. So a huge thank you to Iñaki for opening this for me. Great presentation, Adrian. I mean, pop it back up on the screen with me there for a second, if you wouldn't mind. Fascinating. I mean, the ManoMano story is an amazing success story, and obviously last year, as you just brought us through, has been a whirlwind of a roller coaster. Just before, I mean, you're going to stay with us obviously for the panel discussion later on today as well. I'm really fascinated by the journey that we're going in terms of e-commerce. And so just one question before you hit that panel, we're going to hear from Miles and myself in between. Where do you think, I mean, just broadly speaking, do you think that the DIY industry from an e-commerce perspective is significantly behind other industries, like significantly, or is it just a small bit? Or what's the gap, do you think, between the e-commerce industry and other industries like FMCG and electronics? And how big is the gap, do you think?
No, I think of course we still have a lot of gap to switch, because we have many categories that are more digitalized than ever, like fashion or like home holidays and reservations. So definitely we are a fast-growing industries. The e-commerce will be key, and will be, I think, the future on the e-commerce, because we have still a lot of gap and still a lot of digital transformation to make in the industry. So definitely, I will say we are in the middle of the transformation. There is still a food industry, for example, that are less digitalized than us before the COVID, of course. But definitely there will be there's still work to do, and we will be there to do it at ManoMano.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I would agree with you, actually. I would agree. All right, so stay around for us, will you, Adrian, and we'll come back to you for a panel discussion at the end. So thank you very much for opening today. Listen, and by the way, to the audience, welcome to you all. I'm your host, Ken Hughes. I'm ridiculously late to the event. It's like someone trying to put his pants on coming into a party. So listen, massive internet connectivity issues this morning, so real apologies for being late. But thank you so much to Iñaki for opening and stepping in quickly to open it for you. So listen, welcome to this event. It's an honor. We're not in Copenhagen. We should be, of course. We should be all sipping Carlsberg nicely on a veranda somewhere, enjoying our couple of days at the Global DIY Summit in 2021 in Copenhagen. But we're not there. You know, the UK strain, the Indian strain, delayed vaccines, all sorts of issues. And, you know, it's a really hard decision to postpone events like the Global DIY Summit. And I know I don't obviously sit on the committee, I'm just their host, but I know the committee have really wrestled with this one. You know, do they go ahead? Do you have a hybrid event, a small physical event, and do it virtually? And you know, they made the decision to postpone it to 2022. I personally think that's probably correct. Also, we're only just stepping back into live event spaces across Europe now. All of you tests in the various countries, and I'm sure you're the same wherever you're dialing in this morning. You know, so by the time maybe September, October comes, maybe that light will be there at the end of the tunnel, but it certainly wouldn't have been for June. And I know that the event is so important to everybody watching today. You know, it's a big deal that we get to meet old friends, we make new friends at the event. That Expo Hall is so important to us in terms of business. And so, look, I think the decision to postpone it until next year, until 2022, is probably the right one, where we can come back with a bang and we can all meet physically and have a fantastic event. And so those dates are the 8th and 10th of June, 2022. So literally drop, copy and paste into 2022. So to make sure they are in your diary. So in between now and then, though, we of course have a continuous host of events on this platform for you, including, by the way, the first ever virtual DIY Summit conference coming up in September. I'll have more about that later. But listen, thank you so much for Adrian for his presentation there. And again, as I said, thank you to Iñaki for opening. I'm going to do a little session between now and Miles. So Miles from Euromonitor is coming up after me. And again, it's a great kind of bird's eye view on what's happening in terms of in the world. So I know you're all, and many of you have dived in to hear that also. I'm going to take a little bit of your time to talk about the psychology of consumer recovery. So I'm a consumer behaviorist, is my field of expertise. And I'm fascinated by the psychology of why consumers buy, how they buy, and ultimately, of course, how we can make them buy more. So whether you're in the B2B side of this industry, whether you're a retailer, a supplier, a brand, a provider, this is still relevant to you because it's about the recovery journey that we're all about to go on. So let me share a screen here and we will get going. I'm going to share a PowerPoint deck with you. So hopefully you're going to be able to see that. I'm going to also include some sound because I do want to play a video or two for you. So this is really about understanding the psychology of where people are. So hopefully you can all see that on your screen now. So I've called it the psychology, the big take back. That's what I call this. This is the big take back. We all are yearning for our lives to come back post-recovery. And I think understanding where we're going is always important, of course, to understand where we've come from. So we've gone on this journey and now we are in this masked marketplace. And the question is, what's next? You know, what's next for our customers? What's next for retail? What's next for the brands? What's next for our consumer? And understanding that's really important if we're going to succeed over the next 20, 30 months, you know, next kind of 2 or 3 years. I want to open by having a little conversation with this lady, Brené Brown. Brené Brown is a relationship expert. She's a researcher on vulnerability and courage. And by the way, if you've never watched her Netflix documentary and you're looking for some homework tonight, do dial into her Call to Courage. It's only a 1-hour special. There's a big debate at the moment in industry about recruiting people for IQ versus EQ. This idea of emotional intelligence being maybe even more important than IQ. And understanding connectivity and how to relate to customers. And so she's a really interesting person, but she's got a wonderful quote that I'm going to open with today that says, I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. And those 3 things, making a customer, be they a retail customer, be they an end consumer, feel seen, heard, and valued is so important to building customer lifetime value and building even B2B customer lifetime values. But the question is, how do you do that? How do you make someone feel seen, heard, and valued? Now, we're setting out on a recovery journey here, a social, global recovery journey. And the important thing to understand about recovery is that it's a journey, not an outcome. People often think, oh, recovery, that's an outcome. It's a place where you need to get to, but actually it's not. If any of you have ever gone on a recovery journey of your own, maybe from grief, of losing a loved one or losing a relationship, addiction, you know, whether it's even tobacco, alcohol, at the hard end, drugs, you know, any kind of journey of recovery is just that, it's a journey. And so once you understand that, you think, okay, well, if recovery is a journey, then how do we accompany our customer on this recovery journey? How do we support our customer on this journey? Because that's the key to building customer lifetime value. Now, Dr. Mary Leamy in London has done a huge amount of work on the psychology of recovery, and she's taken all the academic work from the psychology of recovery over the last 30 years and kind of molded it into this 5-pillar kind of steps for a successful recovery. And she calls it the CHIME model, CHIME, and it stands for connection, hope, identity, meaning and purpose, and empowerment. Now, I'm going to take it today to bring you through it, because I think if you can reflect these values and this support back at whoever your customer is, whether it's B2B or whether it's B2C, you then lay down a really successful foundation for customer lifetime value, because you're journeying on their recovery with them, you're supporting them in every part of the recovery, and the people who do that will lay down, as I said, successful foundations for strong customer lifetime value in the future. So let's go through each one of those and see what they mean for you as a brand, or you as a retailer, or you as a provider. So the first one is connection, and it should be really obvious. We need to have connection. And so what's interesting, we had a self-connection experiment over the last year and a half. So we all struggled with who we were during this pandemic. So who am I? And people had various coping mechanisms with self-connection. So people used exercise. So they reconnected with self through exercise. But for our industry, really interesting, watching people reconnect with self through their gardening projects, through their in-home DIY projects. And so they're improving nesting their homes, nesting their gardens, because they want to just reconnect with self. So reconnecting with self is one of the things that has been happening, obviously, for the last year and a half. But now as we're emerging into the recovery phase, obviously reconnecting with others is really, really strong. And people want to touch, they want to have physical connection. So physical connection, by the way, from a research point of view, has been proven to be really good for your heart health. So people who touch more, who hug more, who have more sex, these people actually have been proven to live longer because they have lower heart rates, lower anxiety. So there's your second piece of homework. We're watching Brené Brown's documentary, and you can have more sex with your partner later on. You can say, look, I was told in a webinar this morning. But physical touch is so important to humans. And of course, we've had a big lack of that. So there's a huge need for physical connection. We want more hugs, we want to see people, but then that drifts very quickly into social connection. So again, one of the things that has been missing from society is social connection. Of course, we try to do it this way digitally, but we all yearn for social connection, just like we yearn to be back in Copenhagen next year with each other. So social connection is a really strong consumer value that's pulsing at the moment, and that brands and businesses and retailers can tap into and support. It's really important to understand that. So some of that is about just a big day out. People want to go out and they want to meet their friends and have fun. But of course, understanding our role in this social connection is really important, because people's places are going to become important. So whether you're in-home entertaining or whether you're in the garden entertaining, all this is social connection. It can only happen when you've got your garden and your home in a way that fits. So anyone walking into a DIY store tomorrow needs these images reflected back at them, because in their heart, this is what they're yearning. They're yearning social reconnection with friends and family in these spaces. And these people become very precious spaces, because your own home has been your prison in a way for the last year and a half. But now your home is about to be your entertainment center, your social reconnection center, as is your garden. So we really need to bring that to life in the stores and bring our brands as the conduit for success to that state for our customers to life. So that's the first one, connection. So you have to ask yourself, how are we going to connect with our customers? How are we going to connect with our business partners? This goes B2B and B2C. There's a really strong value connection, so keep that one in mind. The second one is hope. And you have to have hope to be able to recover. So if you're trying to recover, going on your recovery journey, let's take addiction, if you're recovering from drugs, you have to have a hope that you'll get there. Otherwise, how will you ever achieve it? And by the way, hope is very different to wishing. Wishing is kind of a faffy, fluffy, I hope it'll happen. It's very ephemeral. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about man's intrinsic belief that there is a way out, that there is a place that I can be. In fact, Dostoevsky once said that to live without hope was to cease to live. He felt that hope was what made us human. It was an intrinsic quality that made us human. And there's three pillars to successful hope. First one is having a goal. And you all know this if you've ever tried to achieve anything in your own life. So let's say you want to lose weight, or you want to give up smoking. You have to have a goal. You have to have somewhere to aim for. The second one then is agency, and agency is about motivation, having the motivation to achieve your goal. So motivation can be internal, which is what we call willpower. I want to do this, and it can be external. So someone outside of you, be it a life coach, be it a friend, be it family, be it support, be it events like this, giving us the motivation, the inspiration to go on. And then lastly, you have your pathways, and pathways are the routes to achieve your goal. And what's interesting about successful people, if you read lots of books about survival, or if you read books about successful entrepreneurs, you'll notice they have several pathways running at all times. They may have one single goal, they may have a lot of agency to achieve that goal, but they have multiple pathways. And multiple pathways means that if one thing doesn't work out, you've got another way to work it out. And it's a really good thing to take back into your own strategy and your own teams. Always have multiple pathways. So why am I talking about these three pillars? Well, from a hope point of view, we need to get involved. We can't really get involved in goals because obviously internally in our own teams we can, but from a customer point of view, our customers, we need to understand our customers' goals, absolutely. But the agency part is really what we can bring to life. We can be the motivator. We can be the person that accompanies them on the journey. We can help them, and particularly this is true internally, by the way. So you all probably maybe lead teams right now. So your team are looking to you with the kind of a glimmer of hope in their eyes, thinking, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to hit those e-commerce targets? How are we going to get out of this recovery? What's 2022 going to look like? And so they look to you to be that external agency. So it's really important to bring this value to life inside your organizations for the next 6 months, to have the hope, because we're really getting to that place of fatigue. I was with a company last week on a strategic decision-making day, and I could see the fatigue. They've struggled so hard in the last year and a half just to keep things going, and they're running out of energy now to keep agility, keep pivoting, because the pandemic is still here, and we can't let that happen. We have to keep on going. So hope is really important. You have to ask yourself, how are we offering hope to our customers, be that retail or be that end user, and how are we doing it to our teams internally? How are we offering hope? And so really you have to bring hope to life, because it's not going to, we're not going to go on this recovery as a set of individuals. We are a set of teams doing this. The next two I'm going to kind of cluster together a little bit because they're very similar: identity and meaning and purpose. And this really is a kind of a compass moment. This is a moment where, okay, you think, well, where are we and where are we going? As a business, as a society, obviously, there's a larger philosophical discussion happening post-pandemic about who are we, how do we want to work, how do we want to live post-pandemic in terms of health and wellness, in terms of, there's some big conversations happening, and they will, by the way, pan out for the next 2 or 3 years. But let's come back a little bit to just, ourselves in terms of, well, who am I? Who am I as a customer? And who am I as a retailer? What's my why? This is the kind of Simon Sinek, what's my why piece. So we all exist, everyone on this call, we exist to fulfill desires. So a desire is a consumer's wish to have something. And so they want, let's go back to our social connection one. If you're having a barbecue in your garden, if you're having an event in your house, you want to look a certain way, you want certain things. So your fulfillment, you have social desire, your connection desires. So the fulfillment of desire becomes our mission, really. We need to have products and brands and services that help our consumers fulfill their desires. And so obviously out of the gate here, the desires are, to reconnect. I want to go to music festivals, I want to have dinner parties and barbecues, I want to have a massage, I want to go for drinks with my friends, I want to go to live events like theater, not Zooms. I want to go to busy high streets, all that. That's all the kind of fulfillment of desire piece. I want to show you a video it's from the Ford brand in the States. It's a really good example of a fail to me, because when you're stepping out as a brand, or you're stepping out to connect with your customer, what you don't want to do is be a kind of a commercial interest right now. Those were pre-pandemic values. Post-pandemic, you really have to connect with your why. Like, why do I exist? What's my brand going to do for you in your life? What's my brand going to do for society and the world, in fact? And here you have a really good example of, you're going to see a 30-second commercial. And the first 10 seconds are all about, oh, weren't we great? Look how we supported you during the pandemic. So it's all about the community stuff. And that's good. That's good value. But then the second 20 seconds, which is the majority of the campaign, is all about them. It's all about Ford. Buy a car from us. Give us your money. So it spins very quickly from community into commercial interest. And it's just not the right time to do that. Have a look at this.
When America needed us to build, we built. Masks, ventilators, shields. When frontliners needed support, Ford dealers answered. And now we're open and ready to serve you with special offers like 0% financing for 72 months across the Ford lineup. Stop by a Ford dealership or go online. We've made it safer to shop, easier to buy. Right now, lease the new 2020 Ford Escape for just $189 a month for 24 months. For more offers, visit buyfordnow.com.
So can you see what happens there? So, even if I hadn't pointed out to you, you might think, well, hang on, this is very salesy. And this isn't the time to be salesy. So you ask yourself, what's the why? So the why takes sustainability. So sustainability is really important value, we know, for our consumers and particularly in our industry. So that can be your value, but show me how you bring it to life. And this is the challenge I'm pushing back to lots of brands at the moment. Lots of brands have vision and mission statements that are full of wonderful words, but I don't see the values being brought to life on the shelf. Maybe it's in the packaging, in the product itself, in the brand, in the communications, in social media. Sometimes it's very easy to say things, but actually, what's your why? What's your meaning? What's your purpose? What's your identity? And what you need to do is align your identity, your meaning, your purpose with theirs. So if the end consumer values something and you also have that value, you need to show them that value, you need to reflect it in the store, you need to reflect it in your comms, and you need to really genuinely be authentic about it and not be PR tick the box about it. So I think we have a lot of work to do in that space, because I think there's some fantastic stuff happening out there, but actually there's a bit of a chasm between my why and explaining my why to the consumer and to the retailer. And the last one I want to talk about that child model. So we've done connection, hope, identity, meaning, and purpose, is empowerment. And empowerment is, I suppose it's a real, going back to fulfillment of desire, it's a very strong psychological drive. It's kind of like about this, it's kind of superhero inside stuff. It's the big take back. It's what I want. I am empowered. Because again, if you're trying to recover from addiction or recover from anything negative in your life, you have to want it. And this is the wanting of it part. Let me tell you a little story about this guy. This is a guy called Brian Keenan. He's an Irishman. And he was taken hostage in 1986 in Lebanon by Muslim terrorists. And he was held hostage for 4.5 years. Now that's 1,500 days. He was kept in a dark cell, chained, often naked, tortured. He had other hostages killed all around him during that 4.5 years. Imagine waking up every day, not wondering whether you want to live, whether you want to die. These values, I talk about hope and stuff, Brian had to really live these values. But he was eventually released, and these are the photographs that were taken the day he returned to Dublin Airport. So imagine the horrors that he had been through. And he was asked, well, what do you want to do now? And his answer was a real empowerment answer. This was what he answered when he was asked what he was going to do. He said, I'm going to travel. I'm going to visit every country in the world. I'm going to eat all the food of the world, drink all the drink of the world, and make love to every woman in the world. And he got married subsequently, so he never got to do that last bit. Or he has a very understanding wife, one or the other. But just to me, that quote just says it all. That desire to want everything. And I think we're kind of coming out of the pandemic a bit like that as consumers and as individuals. We want it all. And there's kind of a short-term want and a medium-term want. The short-term want is, of course, to plug all the gaps that we've missed out on in the last 18 months. So do the things I want to do. And then the medium term is that little recalibration that I spoke about. Well, how do I want to work? How do I want to live? Maybe I move home. There's some medium-term decisions. So let's take that short-term. So we talked about connection already. So of course, there's a huge desire immediately for physical connection, for physical meeting, for meeting people. There's also, by the way, and this is a watch out because it kind of goes against what I said earlier on about having the home as the hub of social connection and entertaining, and it plays into our industry. There's also a really interesting trend that I'm picking up that people want to escape the home. Because again, I used that expression earlier on, my home is my prison. Because we've been imprisoned in our homes for so long, we may very well see a desire to be anything but home, away from home for the next 6 months. It'll be short term. But I can see it happening already that, we've seen these walls, and these walls have kept me in, and now it's out. And because of the summer coming in, so I think the next 6 months, we are going to see perhaps a dip. We talk about this in the panel later on. Are we going to see a dip of DIY interactivity as people kind of put down the tools, literally and metaphorically, and just get out there and reconnect and escape the home? It's an interesting debate. But what we do know is that people want memories. People are so in the memory banks that we have. Look at Google photographs or Facebook feeds. There's nothing in there for the last year, no experiences. People want to bank memories, and they're yearning to do things to bank those memories. So again, in the stores, we need to bring that imagery to life. It's also going to be quite an indulgent short term. So we've done everything that was asked of us. We've kept away from people. We've been imprisoned in our homes. We've waited for the vaccine. We've done all the things. We've been in the queue for the last year and a half. Now it's about me. I've done what you've asked, now it's about me. So it's going to be a bit more indulgent, less community, maybe more self-indulgence. So again, this is a value that's really strong, and therefore we in our retail stores and our online platforms should be reflecting this back at consumers, the indulgent nature of the next 6 to 12 months. And people obviously want to travel, they want to put their feet into white sand and blue season. And actually, here's one brand that gets the empowerment value I'm talking about. They got a lot of flack for this ad, but when Ryanair launched Jab and Go back in, I think it was February and March, it was early. They said, get your vaccine, book your flight. They got a lot of flack in the press about it because they were saying, well, that's not good. You shouldn't be encouraging people to travel. But they're actually tapping into that empowerment value, that I want this for myself. So ask yourself as a brand, it's really important, what can you do to allow your customers the empowerment to fulfill their desire? That's what they're trying to do. And as a brand, as a business, you need to be supporting this. No matter what your industry actually, but particularly true of DIY, where we have, we own the home, we own the garden, we own that sense of space, that who I am. So we really need to bring that to life. And that the recovery, when I talked about recovery, I talked about it as a journey, and you need to remember that it's a very personal journey. Everyone's recovery is quite a personal thing. And the people and the brands that travel on our recovery journey with us will be in our hearts and minds forever. This is a real potential to not only from a B2B point of view, lay down, as I said, some customer lifetime value foundations, it also is true from a B2C point of view. So that model, CHIME, keep those values in mind and try and build them into everything you're doing from a marketing communications point of view, everything you're doing from a customer communications point of view, and everything you're doing from a B2B relation point of view. They are the values of recovery. I'm going to end with one little metaphor. And it's important to do with timing, because again, it's to do with a lot of the work I'm doing with clients at the moment. by the way, from huge international boards all the way down to mom and pop businesses. There's a fatigue about the pandemic, and we've struggled so far. We see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we kind of think, oh, good. And there's in that, oh, good, there's a relaxation. Shoulders are dropping, and we're kind of, okay, we get there. And actually, it's the worst time to do that. So I'm going to use a little metaphor for driving. I don't know if any of you ever taken a car around the track at speed. So like what the Formula 3 or Formula 4 race track kind of corporate training days, or even go-karting, you know this. So I want to show you a quick video of a race car driver taking a corner. So I'm going to talk about how a race car driver takes a corner. The first thing I'm going to do is just show it to you. I'm not going to say anything, just watch this car go around this corner. Now, besides the fact that he lets his teammate lap him, what's interesting about the way they hit the corner is that they don't accelerate and brake where you think they might happen. And let me talk you through the technicality of taking a corner. So here on the screen is that typical obstacle corner. And the graph there shows you the pressure that's being applied to the brake or the accelerator. And there's actually 6 stages. So you'll see the pressure of the red line there is the pressure on the brake, and the blue line is the pressure going back onto the accelerator. You will see 6 stages to taking a corner. The first stage is what we call the hard stop. And the hard stop is where 100% of the pressure is put on to that brake. Boom, press the brake. Then the next stage is the ease off. And here you start to ease off the brake. And by stage 3, you actually have your foot on neither pedal. You have 0% on the brake, but also 0% on the accelerator because you're about to press it. Stage 4 is when you re-engage the accelerator slightly. And then 5, you're flooring it, and you completely floor it by the end of stage 5, and then you're out top speed coming out the corner. Now that's the 6 stages of taking a corner. But the question for you is, if you're driving your own car on the road today, you're not going to do it the way they do it on the racetrack. Where would you think you're safe to engage the accelerator once again? Because actually most of us will do it when that red line just appeared on the screen. See that flashing red line? That's where most of us, I think, would re-engage the accelerator. We'll still be in the corner, but we're kind of nearly clear of the obstacle, and that feels comfortable. Whereas actually, if you see where the red line starts on the corner, you can see it's way back. It's in fact just when they're coming in, not even halfway into the obstacle, and the professional race driver is re-engaging the accelerator. That's the way you professionally take a corner. It feels so wrong when you're actually training on the track, and it takes years of actual skill. But the important thing, I'm going to show you the video again. You'll see the corner, and it's noted by the black and white little squares on the edge of the corner. So you'll see the corner coming by all those black and white squares. Listen this time to the accelerator, and you'll see where he re-engages. It'll be before the halfway mark. And that's the efficient way of taking a corner. Why am I saying that? Because the hard stop was 2020. And here we are in the obstacle. We're right in the center of the obstacle here at 2021. And we cannot wait until the recovery journey plays out for it to be 2022 to re-engage the accelerator. If we do that in our businesses, we will be so far behind our competitors, and more importantly, we'll be behind our own consumers and customers in terms of what they expect of us. Now is the time to accelerate. So despite all the fatigue that you're feeling kind of in running the businesses through the pandemic, now is the time to floor it, because we're coming into that recovery. And if we're going to be successful with businesses, now is the time to truly engage. You accelerate inside the obstacle, inside the corner. Listen, if you've enjoyed some of that, there's lots of stuff on my YouTube channel on psychology of consumerism, psychology of recovery, psychology of trauma, psychology of survival, lots of different stuff you can bring back to your teams and your own organizations to bring your own business to life a little bit. You can also subscribe to my newsletter on kenhughes.info/blog if you want more information. Once a month, you get a little bit of business case studies and my new videos, and my social media tag, as always, is Ken Hughes ID. So you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and all those usual places. So let me stop that share. So hopefully you found that a bit useful in terms of the psychology, certainly, of that recovery. I think it's really, really important for us all to understand that we are going on this journey with our customers, with our consumers, and it's important that we travel that journey with them. But enough from me, and certainly the next guest knows certainly more about the industry than I do. And if we're going to go on that recovery journey successfully, it's important that we have that real bird's eye view of what's happening. So Miles Agben, I'm going to say Agbenrin, is that right, Miles? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure most of your days are probably spent helping people pronounce that. Nice to see you. Where are you joining in from today?
From London.
From London. Excellent. Good to have you, pal. It's a pleasure. Tell us a little bit about your monitor role.
Yeah, so I am a consultant in the home and technology team. My specialization is on home and garden.
Okay, excellent. And how long have you been doing that with them?
For the company, it's been about 6 years or so, time flies. And then in the specialist consultant role for about a year and a half or so now.
Oh, that's perfect timing from a pandemic point of view. You've been tracking the pandemic from the very beginning. God, maybe you even caused it. And Kira, how has life been for you in the middle of the pandemic? How have you coped with your pandemic? Were you an exercise person? Were you a gardening person? What do you do?
A little bit of both, actually. It was a lot of time exercising, and then it kind of worked out very well that I was taking over this new specialist role, and I had moved into a place with some more garden space. So decided to, kind of making myself a little bit more credible. Spend a lot more time gardening too.
Okay, good, excellent. Well, so I'm really looking forward to your presentation. So I mean, I'm gonna give the screen over to you, and hopefully you'll be around later on to join us afterwards to chat with Adrian too, and we'll kind of get into more of the debate and discussion. So I'll hand it over to you, Miles.
Sure, perfect. Okay. So good morning or afternoon to everybody, depending on your time zones. As Ken said before, I am a consultant with Euromonitor International. I'm going to be, as Ken was kind of alluding to, giving kind of a top level overview of the home improvement or DIY industry, and speaking a bit about a few of the concepts that the other two presenters, Adrian and Ken, had spoken about in their presentation, but from a slightly different viewpoint. So Ken's presentation actually leads in very well to the first trend that I'm going to be bringing up here. So let's get into some context first, and then we'll get into the meat and bones of the presentation itself here. So hopefully we're loading up okay. So just for some quick context for everybody, unless specifically stated on any of these slides, everything that I present is going to be in millions of US dollars at constant 2020 terms. We're covering the home improvement industry. It is one of the 4 sections of the Home and Garden project, which also includes for us gardening, homewares, and home furnishings. So we're going to be covering these categories here. These are broken out. These are global sales for 2020. These will be available to view afterwards. There's of course more detail on any of these by region, by market, and a further breakdown of all the data afterwards here. So just some context for everybody here. So Ken's presentation actually goes right into one of the first things I wanted to bring up. So here we have total global value sales charted from 2019 through the forecast to 2025. So unsurprisingly, in 2020, the industry saw a dip. What we don't see here is that this was primarily driven by the decline in sales from developing markets in 2020. So in developing regions, with very few exceptions, home improvement products saw a decline in 2020. So lots of the major categories like home paint were in decline that year in the pandemic for a few reasons in a few different markets, but say in a market like India, same was the case in Taiwan and was the case in China. Consumers tended to prefer do it for me as opposed to consumers in developed markets who were more likely to engage in home improvement as a hobby, to take up the extra time to increase the form and function of their own homes during the pandemic. In 2020, consumers in developing markets were far more likely to wait for the pandemic to be over, to be able to get in the professional help to get projects done. That has to do quite a lot with the relative cost of labor in those markets versus the developed world. So to illustrate that a bit more clearly, what I've done here is I have pulled the total absolute value growth added in 2020. So this is 2019 versus 2020, total value growth added in that year. I've pulled the top growing categories and regions for home improvement. So as before, the industry saw an overall decline in total sales. That was driven primarily by a decline in almost all of the major categories for home improvement, led by Asia Pacific. So big decline there. The resilient categories tended to be light DIY associated categories. So projects that consumers could engage in with relatively little skill or experience and professional help, with paint being the largest one of all of those. So of course, this was a category that consumers could get access to fairly quickly, that did not need much time or experience, and could make a major improvement in the form and function of any room with relatively little impact, as opposed to some of the major DIY projects or kitchen remodels. Paint was an easy, quick way for a relatively inexperienced consumer to make a major impact on how their home looked. So the trend, of course, was that consumers in home seclusion were able to spend much more time at home, and because of this, so some of the problems that consumers might have previously ignored were much more apparent. And so there was a big desire in developed markets for consumers to make some of the improvements they could get access to. So light DIY was the big winner in 2020, but overall a major decline for the industry. Now, what is interesting is how that changes over the forecast period. So all our evidence, so this is, of course, the absolute value growth between 2020 and 2025 that we expect to see. There's a major difference, of course, in the total period we are analyzing. So of course, we expect to see greater growth where we are analyzing 5 years versus just one. But the difference here is in the rankings, that it is very important. So where we had seen consistently stronger growth from developed markets, that switches around where the big growth we expect to see in home improvement over that forecast period is expected to come from developed markets. Paint being the second largest growing category, with floor tiles and floor covering coming up fairly strongly. So what you don't see here, and what we spend some more time on in some of our upcoming presentations, is that Western Europe, which had seen a major increase in sales of these quote unquote light DIY products, is expected to falter over the forecast period. Why is that the case? Because all of our evidence points to, while there has been a clear increase in the confidence and interest in DIY among consumers, especially younger consumers in developed markets, that is not expected to continue over the rest of the forecast period, especially in developed markets, as consumers, as Ken was just kind of pointing to, seek to plug the gaps. So there's an increase in confidence as new DIYers, consumers who had not previously spent any time painting anything, fixing anything, building anything, took some interest in the category. So I'm a prime example of that. Took some interest in the category as a form of recreation and as a way to increase the form and function of their own spaces. There has not been a corresponding increase in the innovation or structural change in the industry at large that would see it counterbalance the competition from all of the other forms of entertainment and the going out, the restaurants and travel that consumers were not able to take part in during the pandemic. So there are significant opportunities, but they would have required more innovation to make the category more accessible to consumers. We see this same dynamic taking place in some of the other industries we cover. So say gardening is a major one, where there was a big spike in that homebound hobby interest in the gardening category, but little structural change in the industry taken by players to capitalize on that. So while we expect significant growth to come from developing markets, where spending was put off during the pandemic and the growth of the industry was slowed down, that kind of long-running expansion of the formal industry for DIY, we don't expect that to be the case in developed markets. So let's talk about one of the other lasting impacts of the pandemic. So home and garden across the board has long been a very attractive target for venture capital investment. It falls into a group of those industries that has traditionally been extremely fragmented. And as venture capital and private equity investment has grown and exhausted some other quick, high value growth opportunities, home and garden, eyewear, and pet care have been a few industries where fragmentation has presented some very, very interesting opportunities. So this model has essentially been to take a range of fragmented businesses across the value chain, to buy them up, combine them into consolidated business groups, sell them on, either to other corporates or to other investors, and to be able to churn and burn some very attractive businesses where you can see a discount. So that has created a very slow but consistent increase in total concentration in all the industries in home and garden. Here, I am looking at the top 10 companies' share in home improvement, 2015 to 2020, and we can see across almost all regions a consistent increase between those years in concentration. That concentration extends into retail as well. So when you actually do the combination of all of these globally, it's actually far more significant, where the top 10 companies have seen their share of home improvement and gardening stores increase fairly quickly. Home improvement and gardening retail has tended to be one of the more attractive areas for venture capital investment to get into. It is an area that has seen this concentration go at a slightly faster rate than the manufacturer level. But essentially, across the value chain, a consistent gradual increase in concentration over the pandemic period. So one of the other trends that we've seen some strong evidence of is this aspect of consolidation through crisis. So crisis triggering consolidation or concentration in an industry. So we've seen this long running consolidation across home and garden that we expect to be accelerated by the impact of the pandemic. So one of the examples I'd like to reference to kind of point to what this could look like is the acquisition of Conforama by Boot, where you have a retailer, though this of course is not strictly specific to home improvement. They're a combination of a few of the categories we track in home and garden, but a retailer that is struggling specifically because of the impact of the pandemic in 2020 is acquired by a retailer who was already considering acquisitions and expansion, sees a discounted player and uses that to increase its scale. And in France, created immediately the #1 home and garden specialist retailer in that market almost overnight. So we expect that trend to be a catalyst for further consolidation across the value chain over the next 5 years or so. So let's talk then, as we were on the retail angle, about the actual growth of the various retail channels. So unsurprisingly, e-commerce took off in 2020 with the fastest growth by far, while all other channels saw a decline. So here I'm showing the year-over-year growth of home improvement retail globally, just to give a perspective on how different the pandemic period was, 2019 versus 2020. Of course, e-commerce seeing a major uptick in sales. But that said, when we see the percentage of share that each channel accounts for, so of course, I've combined a range of other channels, including grocery stores, hypermarkets, home shopping, into one group called other channels. But we see that e-commerce has increased significantly in size. Home improvement and gardening stores have decreased, as have other channels, but home improvement and gardening stores still take up the vast majority. The bricks and mortar stores still take up the vast majority of sales, while e-commerce is gaining interest, gaining influence over total retail value. Yeah. So there's an aspect of this that I believe is really important and leads into the actual kind of point of my side of the presentation here. So while we see this extremely aggressive e-commerce growth, we don't have any indication that all or the the vast majority of the industry is expected at any point to be entirely digital, nor is the industry expected to be entirely physical going forward in the future. We've been asked many questions by clients about, is there any possibility that e-commerce grows into the dominant channel for the category, cannibalizing sales that were traditionally mostly bricks and mortar? And there's some analysis to be done there, but I believe we're asking the wrong kind of questions here. The most important part of this is, instead of the competition in between these two channels, is how these two channels tend to interact and how consumers use them. That has some more strategic relevance for players right now, as opposed to the potential longer term future where we have some strange circumstance where e-commerce is the vast majority channel. There are some immediate competitive implications for manufacturers and retailers to pay attention to. So to visualize that, I turned to our global consumer lifestyle survey. So here we ask consumers their motivations for shopping in store versus shopping online. So in store, there aren't too many big surprises here, but the combination of the top motivations consumers globally cite for going in store tend to be motivations we categorize as being impulse and uncertainty driven. So the idea that you do not have enough tangible information to be able to make a purchase choice. So you need to see a product, feel its quality, or you have a clear immediate need to make a purchase. So the immediate purchase idea being when a consumer cannot wait, or this is purely impulse driven, or the aspect of just being able to get access to a convenient retail store. So no surprises there, but this compares quite differently to the key motivations consumers cite for online shopping. So these motivations, best price, unsurprisingly being the top, all tend to be cost and convenience driven. So best price, free shipping, and the ability to order at any time from anywhere. Online shopping has a key role to play in adding convenience to a consumer's life. The best price motivation is a very interesting one, because when we bring this up, many clients have asked us if that means that the online shopper is particularly more price sensitive. And this is consistent across any other industry. Any consumer good tends to have our best price as the prime motivation for shopping online. But that does not seem to be the case from the evidence we're seeing. So while consumers cite best price as a motivation for shopping online, it does not tend to be that consumers are more price sensitive. So can we bring up the example of, say, luxury goods, where watches were one of the industries where we saw a huge investment from traditional luxury watch manufacturers in e-commerce platforms of various scales and sizes. So for anything from review sites to secondhand resellers to marketplaces, all being acquired by some of the major traditional watch brands, Richemont being very active in that sense. So these are not price sensitive consumers overall, but these are consumers who, like kind of almost any of us, don't want to feel as if they are being cheated out on a potentially better deal. So best price to us is less about online shopping having a traditionally lower price relative to bricks and mortar stores, more to do with the fact that consumers are easily and quickly able to compare a range of prices and ensure they're getting the best value for their money. Slightly more complex nuance on that, but again, unsurprising why consumers have that motivation. So this then leads into the concept of the consumer journey to get to a closer idea of where e-commerce versus bricks and mortar actually fits into the strategic and competitive landscape for home improvement. So we've done a really simplified model of the consumer decision-making journey. So of course, this gets much more complex if you're looking at the model done by McKinsey or BCG, but for our purposes, we're using a much more kind of stripped down version of it. So for some practical example, this is the process where consumers become first aware of either a need, so something they need to fix or build or buy to suit a project in the home, or aware of a particular brand or product in general. So this traditionally would be done by a brand's own advertising through word of mouth or through the recommendation of a contractor, or just through pure happenstance as the consumer is doing some other kind of shopping. But it's the concept of the first point where they just become aware of a product or need to be fulfilled. Then the process they go through to evaluate the various brands, prices, product quality, to compare a range of options. So in the traditional model of this consumer decision-making journey, this would be where a consumer first becomes aware of a general need. They look at what products are available. So they compare the entire industry, all brands available. The evaluation process is when they start eliminating brands based on any number of factors. So quality, availability, does the brand actually ship to my location? Is it available for me to purchase? Is it too pricey? So on and so on. It's the process of stripping out brands from their decision-making baskets, and nothing too crazy there. But instead of it just being a process of sheer elimination, it's the overall process where consumers do more education. So this could take from anywhere from a few seconds to several months, depending on what product it is. We're not going to be specific about the time period. It's more important for us to on just the general concepts that consumers are spending time stripping away brands, adding in some new ones, doing the evaluation. So traditionally, of course, this could also be done in a store. So consider, for example, a consumer visiting a large out-of-town hypermarket. They will spend time comparing different brands, or it could be done from a catalog or a big multi-brand retailer, or talking to other consumers and friends and family and so on. The evaluation process in a general sense. Then the actual purchase. So this is actually a really important point to stop on, just because most of the analysis we do as an organization, all of it, is focused specifically on where consumers actually spend. So when we do the channel breakdown, all we're actually talking about is where consumers do purchasing. It's much more difficult in a general sense to get an idea of where consumers spend time evaluating other brands if it isn't in the overall network that a brand owns. So one of the major drivers for some of the luxury watch brands for acquiring some of the resale sites, the review sites, was to have some control and some influence over all of the other aspects of this consumer journey. So they want to be able to see where consumers are forming opinions of their brands before they make an actual purchase. Even when luxury watch sales had very similar to home improvement, a single-digit percentage share going through online channels. So this, of course, would go traditionally through your own store and the multi-brand retailer. And then the loyalty or post-purchase aspect of the consumer decision-making journey. Very important, and we're talking quite a lot more about this concept recently, is where consumers do all of their subsequent purchases. How likely are they to continue to shop through the retailer, through the same brand? Tons of models, but for our purposes, we're just talking about this concept in general. So this is not a perfectly A plus B plus C linear process. Consumers will tend to go back and forth at various stages. And you can also model this, as McKinsey does, as a cycle where consumers have repeating feedback loops as they make various purchases, and will double back at various stages. But for our purposes, a nice, clear, basic linear process. So digital channels have, of course, added a range of other options for these stages of the journey to take place. So of course, there are associated costs for brands to push consumers to move from each of these stages, from purchase to loyalty. The advent of digital channels adds more options, more potential places where brands have to spend, so social media being a really big one, more potential places where brands have to spend to be able to keep consumers moving along like this process, to stay with them. It also adds more complexity in the consumer journey overall. So one of the places where complexity has increased significantly, and the place where most of our clients are the most concerned about, is of course the actual purchase phase, because this was an area that, even though consumers could spend tons of time talking to their friends and family and going around doing all of their own individual research to evaluate brands and quality, they were still constrained as to where they could make purchases by the physical retailer itself. So the online channel, of course, adds a range of other options. So the multi-brand, the marketplace, the brand's own website, of course, being an option, and adds some complexity there. And of course, the advent of C2C resale. So various channels allow you to do that. But this consumer decision-making journey has also been increased in complexity in the awareness and evaluation phase. So again, luxury watch brands have been extremely active in trying to take more control over where consumers form opinions about their brands. How do you compare any of my watches to a subset of other watches? I want you comparing my brand to other brands that I deem as worthy of being compared. Made kind of sense. But also, there's increased complexity in the loyalty phase, where consumers could make a purchase through your own store, but then make all subsequent purchases online. It's a concept we spend quite a bit of time talking about for, say, the eyewear industry, where a brand new consumer needs to take part in the physical retail experience to get an eye test, to get the experience and advice of a professional. But then after that, after a consumer is somewhat more experienced buying eyewear products, they have a giant incentive, because of the cost of convenience, to make the purchase and to make all subsequent purchases through any number of the faster cost-saving options available online. So a general increase in complexity, which you can see with the range of other channels consumers can use to become aware of brands, to evaluate products and performance. One of the major things we saw in 2020 was a huge uptick, especially in developed markets, of consumers using social media to educate themselves about various DIY projects and products. So YouTube and TikTok being some of the standouts there. There's a very big story about a TikToker who would mix paints and became very popular, who was a major inspiration for consumers who were just getting into home paint as a way to increase the form of their form and function of their spaces, and as a hobby as well. But then, of course, we see increasing complexity in where consumers can actually make a purchase of any of the brands or products they've spent some time getting educated on. So that, of course, can come through a brand's own site, such as any of the sites offered by Kingfisher, the marketplaces offered by Mano, and even some much larger, less selective marketplaces like Amazon, and of course, players like eBay, which offer consumer resale as well. So very important here to see the increase in complexity, but also what we expect to see more of is a huge increase in new entry by online marketplaces and multi-brands, a very important part of the consumer journey. So the one aspect of the consumer journey in home and garden that we have not as yet seen the same trends, dynamic and speed in the uptake in e-commerce as we've seen in, say, the fashion industries, is the presence of curated multi-brands. So multi-brands being, say we're talking about apparel, or speaking about an ASOS, a Zalando, which are different to a Amazon, for example, in that the brand selection is curated, which points right at the cost and convenience aspect that drives consumers online. So multi-brands have been a major factor in accelerating the uptake of e-commerce. So a major marketplace like, say, an Amazon requires the consumer to do quite a lot of scrolling through a range of brands and a range of offers, from everything from totally unbranded products to resellers to brands from a range of other markets. It still requires some level of expertise, some level of confidence in buying some of the products, some level of education in how to differentiate quality. So the curation that a marketplace like an ASOS offers is the ability for a consumer who may not have full knowledge of how to select quality, so very different from, say, a professional consumer. It offers the consumer some level of confidence, and this is a major aspect that multi-brands tend to trade on, is the idea that we are a credible one-stop shop, is that you have, as opposed to a full selection of everything in the industry or just a single own brand website, we offer you the top 10, top 5, top 20 most recognizable brands in any particular category. Now, of course, for an industry like home improvement, where the industry is extremely fragmented, that's a lot more challenging to produce than something, say, for homewares or home furnishings, where brands are larger, more recognizable, and are spread across multiple product categories. But the multi-brand, as it serves a range of other industries, is to show you the most credible brands and really quickly lets you do a reasonable guess of what are prices generally like for this kind of product, what is quality generally like. If I want to make a purchase quickly, I can go onto an ASOS or to a Zalando, and I won't be able to see every brand of sneakers online available, but I have the top 10, the most important, the Nikes, Adidas, and Converse, and it gives me a shortcut, which is really, really important to appeal to younger consumers, for whom the e-commerce part of the consumer decision-making journey really dramatically speeds up the evaluation portion of the industry, the ability to compare prices and quality. So, of course, to be able to do that, all of these curated multi-brands trade on their credibility as a single point for the most recognizable sources, most recognizable brands in the particular category. So it requires the presence of the most recognizable brands in that category. And we go into quite a bit of detail in our upcoming home world market for homewares and home furnishings on what that then means for some of the major players in the category, like Kingfisher and IKEA. So what have we seen over the pandemic? So I'm going to speak about this using an example from Brazil, when in 2020, we saw a huge uptick in IPOs, investment, and growth from online multi-brands and marketplaces. Multi-brands being one of the more strategically interesting parts of the development, where previously we had not seen nearly as many significant and growing players in that home improvement, home and garden multi-brand. So here we have a selection of players, Mobley being entirely online, and Caro and Privalia being online and physical to more or lesser degrees there. Privalia being specifically interesting as a player who trades in a range of other products and also does home improvement and home and garden. We're seeing increased investment and growth in e-commerce multi-brands and marketplaces. After these players are able to gain strength, to gain scale and credibility, we can expect to see, similar to the strategy employed by ASOS and by Amazon, for these players to invest heavily in their own private in their own private label after first becoming a credible source as a one-stop shop. Then they're able to justify the sale of their their own label brands as a major factor for consumers. So this, of course, first requires them to be the credible source for all of the evaluation and information consumers need to get about the products in a particular industry or category, and then they become a very significant competitive threat. So there we go. This is my quick overview of some of the major, most impactful strategic trends over the consumer journey in home improvement. Quite a lot more detail in the upcoming presentations and briefings we are going to put out. So of course, contact me for any more detail on those, as those are coming out shortly. There we go.
Miles, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. Actually, Adrian, if you're around here, if you can unmute your mic and join me back on screen also. Yes, just all there. Very good. We only actually have 15 minutes for our panel discussion because we've all been chatting so much. Mind you, some of the questions I've written you've already answered, which is great. And by the way, anyone watching, the chat thing is here, I think, on this side on the platform. So if you want to type a question into there, and it'll pop up here for us. And so if you want to ask any of the guests today a question, including myself, pop that question in now and we'll pick it up. Let's start with one that I have myself, having listened to both of you this morning. And one of the points I made about escaping the box of home is quite interesting. So both of you studying the industry, both from a retail perspective and from an outside perspective, do you think we're going to see a dip for the back end of 2022? Even from your own perspective, in Mano Mano, do we think we're going to see a dip of sales as people emerge from home, re-engage their lives, drop all the projects that they've been doing, you know, in the last kind of 18 months? Do we think we're going to have a short-term flattening of the sales curve as we enter out of 2021? What's your opinion on that?
Mike, do you want to go or should I go?
Yeah, jump in.
Okay. So yeah, definitely, I think there is there won't be a decade and a dip from a retailer perspective in the market, and I think a lot of new study, for example, an Accenture study just in 2021 says that the consumer will pay particular attention to their design of their home during the next 10 years. So the only thing that can affect the dip is mainly raw materials and shortage, but the demand are still here, and the demand will increase on this one, and in the next 10 years it will be the case due to
an optimistic answer from Adrian. Miles, what about you?
Yeah, so as we were talking about in the presentation, I think there's two different aspects of that. It is one, we're extremely confident in a general increase in interest and confidence among consumers. That's a very big thing, because the story for the industry over the past 20 years or so has been, especially the younger consumer group in developed markets, being very anti-DIY, not growing up with these skills and exposure to the industry. There's definitely been a major uptick in the industry, in the overall consumer interest in those markets. So that one is like one aspect of that is potential demand. So potential is absolutely increased post-pandemic. Now, that being said, all of our indications of that, in a few markets, there is expected to be an increase in sales to continue expanding as consumers kind of spend some more time and are more interested in home design, improving their properties and everything. But we do not expect that there has been enough innovation to make the category dramatically more appealing relative to all of the other places where consumers could spend their disposable income. So the travel, the outdoor activities. In a few cases, in some gardening categories, has been a major increase, where some brands have been very savvy to cotton on to, okay, there's a big increase in these brand new gardeners. We are going to focus on SKUs that let you set up an indoor garden really quickly. So lots of the digital kind of like a digitally kind of supported garden type products are available. But on average, I don't see enough innovation to to let the industry compete and to access that potential demand. Is there potential? Absolutely. But on average, I don't see enough relative to continue. Like keep in mind though, like we didn't do this analysis like by industry, but if you looked at total industries, so total consumer goods industry, home and garden actually took a disproportionate share of industry sales in 2020 kind of versus the rest of consumer goods. I don't expect that situation to continue in the forecast period. Of course, very different story in the developing markets where we have strong growth forecasts.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, it's crystal ball gazing. And Adrian, do you agree with Miles' point about innovation? That there's, I mean, maybe not from your particular aspect of Mano Mano, but in general, that there's a lack of innovation in that DIY space?
Not sure if there is a lack of innovation. I think mice have more information about me about this, but definitely there is new type of competition, and that also accelerate innovation for traditional brands. So as we will have more competition in the future, also seeing the new type of brands coming, a new type of no-name brands and stuff coming, I think the innovation will also be part of the next year on the category, and so it's a good thing, I think, for the future next year.
Okay, actually, I want to pick up something that you said there, Miles, about the do it for me piece. What's your opinion on, you know, if we're looking at Gen Z as a culture, I suppose late millennials, early Gen Z, because Gen Z is only 21, 22, 23 coming out now. So let's look at the late millennial maybe, and their attitude, as you said there, Miles, to, you know, maybe not having the skills, not being that generation that grew up with so many hands-on skills, but they are, of course, very much the gig economy generation. They're very much about the side hustle. Everyone's got their side thing, and so growing up inside the gig economy means that you are automatically wired to outsourcing stuff and having, you know, your Uber driver comes to you, your Deliveroo Uber Eats driver comes to you, and everything is kind of coming to me. And so I will outsource anything I want, how I want to eat, how I want to travel, Airbnb, how I want Uber. And so therefore it makes sense, doesn't it, to assume that they are going to be the ones that will drive the do it for me industry more perhaps than DIY. So maybe they're not going to have the skills. Maybe they're not going to want the skills. Maybe that's going to, what's your own opinion on that?
Yeah, so that's actually a pretty interesting question there. Yes, there's a very strange dichotomy in that generational group you're talking about, where there is clearly an interest in reconnecting with some older skills. So like when I say some older skills, I mean some like in you know, like some arts and crafts, handwriting, gardening, home improvement. There's clearly an interest in doing that on some level from that consumer group as a form of recreation, where these kinds of skills are being put out on social media as good ways to work on your mental health, as good ways to take more control of your own environment. And there is this definite portion of demand coming from that part of the industry. Now, that being said, the overall home improvement in industry is not set up for this arts and craft hobby style demand. The vast majority of industry is still catering towards the industry where consumers are doing these projects out of actual necessity. So where consumers are buying in the tools, buying in the paint for big remodels, for big projects they're going to take on, as opposed to these niche kind of recreational like hobby interests. So the do it for me side of the industry clearly has some potential. I don't know how significant that is going to be, relatively speaking, over the next 5 to 10 years, especially in these developed markets we're talking about. It's extremely clear in developing markets, right? It's overall growth picture that is totally separate to this kind of conversation. But like for these developed markets, I'm not quite so significant how that develops in time. But then again, that's also a limitation of the kind of research we do. I'm specifically focused on the purchases made by consumers of consumer goods style products. So wherever there is a contractor or a complete outsourcing of a product or a purchase, yeah, that could be great for the industry overall, but it's not something we want to track. We want to track you going into a physical store or you going to make a purchase.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Adrian, I mean, you're from a consumer profile point of view, if you were to age demographic, the man consumer, obviously it's everybody, but do you have a skew towards a younger population? If you're going to take it from kind of 45 down, would that be fair?
But I don't have a lot of data to share right now, but what we are seeing is that there is new young consumers who are interested in the DIY home improvement. But just to get back to the DIY versus do it yourself, just a word about the dual approach we have and we can see on Western Europe, because today in Northern Europe there is a full DIY boom, I will say, when in Southern Europe, we more do it for me. So that's why we also have launched ManoMano Pro in the Southern Europe to help building and revolutionize the purchasing process for professionals. But definitely we have this durable approach. We can see it at European level for my market.
Yeah, I personally think it's yet to play out because we're so young in the Gen Z generation coming of age, and Gen Z will of course define all our success in the next 10 years. I believe the millennial generation were the warm-up. They were the support act. They were the generation that went from analog to digital, and Gen Z is the first generation that of course are truly digital. And I think as they emerge out of university, start owning homes, and that's really the next 10 years, I think we're going to see a huge play. Now, I mean, we talked a lot about e-commerce today, obviously having you, Adrian, and Miles as well. I have a question about data, because I'm curious in terms of the quality of the data that's out there. And this is just an opinion piece, by the way, for you guys as well. I don't expect you to have an answer on research, but what do we feel that e-commerce runs on data, obviously. What do we think that the DIY industry, where is the industry on a data perspective? Do we have the data? Are we collecting it right? Are we using it right? Are we actioning the data? Do we have the systems in place? Are we behind the curve simply on that level?
So actually, I think this would be a pretty interesting one for me to start with, and then to Adrian. I have a strong idea where he's going to go with this one, but it's a nice question there, actually. So from our perspective, we tend to focus on strategic data. So points that clients are going to use to make decisions with at the C-suite level. So our experience has tended to be that when it comes to e-commerce, the major need for most of our clients currently has tended to be on extremely granular tactical data. And that's fair enough. That's just the general development of the industry over time. But if you compare that to the kind of question that is being asked by some of our clients in some of the consumer goods and some of the larger fashions type players, the questions are very different, where these consumer goods players, say food, for fashion, are asking quite strategic questions about how does a specific channel or a specific kind of e-commerce channel fit into the competitive landscape overall, where lots of the clients for home and garden are asking us extremely granular questions. Generally speaking, there is tons of tactical data that's available, but it tends to be organization specific or enterprise specific. There's lots of that. There is not nearly as much overall strategic market data available, either because there is not yet the demand from organizations who are still at the kind of granular phase, building up the infrastructure to gather and process enterprise data, or because the industry itself is just not ready to ask those questions for whatever reason, or it's just very difficult to get access to. But at the minute, there definitely is a fairly large difference between the e-commerce growth size share data available for home and garden versus, say, apparel and footwear. There's a big gap there for sure.
Yeah. Adrian, what about you? Lastly to you.
Yes, so definitely I think you can see in my presentation, data is part of the transformation process and it will grow with e-commerce. An example for ManoMano, and I will go after. So we are a data-driven company, so our challenges, and we use data to fully understand our catalog and how to categorize product, how to detect products that do not match our quality in our platform. And I think Miles explained it on how retailers have to do curation of their catalog and how how can we use data to be sure that we can provide the best quality products for consumer and to drive them into their choice. So definitely, as a retailer, we want to support and to use data, and we already do it as closely as possible to be sure that we have a personalized recommendation for construction professional and consumer. So these are clearly technical challenges today that needs to be tackled by a retailer. So we are doing it, but I think a lot of retailers need to do it also. And from a brand perspective, they still have a lot of work to do. This is a huge change for brands. So how to collect data, how to have the right infrastructure, and how to be sure that we can analyze it. So have the right skills to do it. So definitely, the data transparency will come in the future, I guess, in the industry, because more and more e-commerce allow more and more data transparency on also on media, but also on sales and etc. But so it will come. I'm not sure this is completely ready yet, but definitely at Mano we are working on it, and we are one of the most data-driven company in the sector. So it's also we are also sensitive to data regulation, because data is a global world. There is many topics inside it. So definitely the main focus for all brands and retailers should be data in the coming next year with the explosion of e-commerce.
Yeah. No, I agree with a lot you said there. Listen, we have run out of time. We could talk for probably another 2 hours. I'm not too sure what the audience appreciate it, but I'm sure we three could. But listen, I really want to thank you for your time today. Thank you for the amazing presentation, for the work you put in, and for meeting and chatting with me. Adrian, sorry I didn't even get to introduce you personally. You can blame my I'm sure Iñaki did a great job in my internet blackout moment. But listen, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you soon. I hope they will see you next year also in the audience or on the stage in Copenhagen. So listen, if you could knock off your cameras there, if you turn them off for me and turn off your microphones. Just for the audience watching, thank you so much for your time this morning. And if you're watching on demand, thank you for dialing in. As you know, on this platform, there's such a huge amount of content. And so do go digging around. The next events that we've coming up, I've written them down for you to make sure I don't forget. Next one up is on the 16th of June. So again, if you've been following John Herbert's series of Meet the CEO, it really is an excellent series of CEO interviews with retailers from DIY and brands all over the world. So it really is worth tuning in. And so before our summer break, John's last interview was with Yasunori Ishiguro from the DCM Group in Japan. So again, an Asian perspective. Do dial into that. That's on the 16th of June at 10 CET. And then after that, we have Victoria Newhower's session on sustainability. I'm sure you've been following Victoria's sessions also. They're amazing on sustainability. This one's about the sustainability and the DIY industry, and particularly on the sustainability of packaging. And again, really amazing sessions. And that one is on the 23rd of June. So make sure you tune into that. We're then going to take a summer break for July and August. We're going to kick off. We're going to find some beaches. We're going to all relax, hopefully. And then we're back with you in September. And so in September, we're going to have the first ever virtual global DIY summit. And again, it's a shame that we're not here in person today in Copenhagen, but we're going to do it virtually in September. And there's a great lineup of speakers. Again, there's 12 speakers. So go online and have a look. Where you want to register, and this time we get it right, is virtualdiysummit.org. So you want to register for that event, and that is on the 9th and 10th of September, 2 days. So again, we're going to bring you a congress digitally, and we're going to get into the debates and the discussions. And again, I've just had a look at some of the speaker lineup, and it is really amazing. And so again, we're conscious of bridging that gap between the physical event next year in June in Copenhagen. And so this platform, and I'll be honest, I work across a number of industries, a number of client platforms like this. And honestly, this isn't me saying it because I'm honest, but Iñaki and his team have done such a spectacular job here, keeping all of us together, both retailers and suppliers and distributors and brands all together on this platform, sharing debates and discussions. So even if you're watching this live, which is fantastic, also on demand, there's a huge amount of content that we've built up since the launch last year. And also, by the way, you can continuously debate and discuss with your members as you would at an expo hall or in a kind of a networking event. You can do it here digitally, so please do that and check out all the sponsors of the platform. And look, it's a great way of keeping in touch. So enjoy your summer. I have been Ken Hughes. I have been late for today's event. Blame my son. During the last speaker, when Miles was speaking, I had to look. I was curious, why couldn't I connect? Do you want to know the answer? My 15-year-old son plugged out my Ethernet cable from my studio here to gaming last night at 1 a.m., which I only discovered this morning in a panic trying to get online. I eventually found it, so he's in trouble when he wakes up. Anyway, so listen, have a great day. Thank you for dialing in, and you will see me at the virtual event in September. You will see John on the 16th, and you see Victoria on the 23rd. Until next time, I'm Ken Hughes.